Welcome to a Champion's Journey podcast. I'm Matt Davidson. From an early age, I've had the privilege of learning from world champions and world-class performers, and I've always been fascinated by what drives them to the pinnacle of achievement. In this podcast, I'll interview high performers to learn more about the habits, rituals, tactics, and strategies which have aided them throughout the course of their journeys so that we can take those lessons and apply them to ours. The mission of the Champion's Journey podcast is to interview not only those who have stood on the top podium in arenas of high-level competition, but to learn from those who have conquered life's greatest challenges and have dared to live life on their own terms. My next guest is Scott Festa. Scott is a former U.S. Army Green Beret Colonel, current business owner, physician's assistant, and adventure-philanthropist who creates intensive physical and mental endurance challenges to raise money and awareness for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. In this episode, you'll learn how Scott prepares physically and psychologically to take on these incredible challenges while being driven by the mantra, "No child deserves cancer." If you'd like to consider donating or finding other ways to get involved, please visit the St. Jude Children's Research Hospital website at stjude.org. That's www.stjude.org. Please welcome Scott Festa. What inspired you when you were a child? What did you want to be?
I wanted to be an English teacher.
Yeah. Wow.
I had a 10th grade English teacher. This guy's name was Mr. Stallings. He would work at a school for like 3 years, and then he would get fired, and he'd go work at a different school. But he was so demanding, and he was so hard. Like if you got a C in his class, it was like getting an A in anyone else's. But it doesn't translate on a transcript, so you just had a C. And I was one of, in 5 years, like he hadn't given out an A, and I was like 1/10 of a point from getting an A in his class. And but he was just so hard. It was just, I'm going to expound on this. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go right in.
But he would tell you your grades before the midterm, and then he would tell you your grades after or before the end of the year. And there was one girl, I'll never forget this. He said she had gotten an F by like 1/10 of a point. He said, "I will lend you 1/10 of a point and you can have a D." And she was like, "I'll take it." And he said, "I'm taking it back. I mean it." And at the end of the year, she calculated out her grade. And you can already see where this is going, but she calculated out her grade and she had an F, or a D, I'm sorry, like by the skin of her teeth. And then he was like, "Do you want me to read your grade out loud?" And he would ask everybody that. And if you just said no, he would just show it to you. And if you said, yeah, he would read out loud. And he said F. And she was like, no, like I didn't. And he's like, "You remember that 10th of a point that I lent you?" And you could just see she just turned pale white. And he was just always so demanding. And he was just always, I credit that guy to shaping me as an influencer, as a mentor or whatever. And I just wanted to be that hard or that defined, I don't know, that disciplined in life. And I had him that year. He taught summer school that year, got fired because everybody in summer school failed. And like summer school was traditionally, you go there and you just kind of hang out and
right.
you get moved along. But he didn't do that. Those weren't the rules. And so I always wanted to be an English teacher like him. And
So he kind of had maybe a slight rebellious part to his nature as far as not wanting to maybe pass all the kids because maybe that's what was expected of him as a teacher. Was that one of the elements that you liked about his style? It was,
well, yeah, you're not just going with the status quo, but you're actually going with what you were hired for. That those were the expectations when I assume when he started teaching, those were the expectations that, this was what an A is, a B is. And then he just wasn't going to bend, that was the standard, and that was it. And I thought, man, I'm in the right place. And I actually, the first 2 weeks of school, people were fighting to get out of his class. I fought to get in it. I have a lot of brothers, and they were all like, "Hey, stay away from that guy." And I fought to get into his class, and I got there 2 weeks behind. And he's like, okay, well, this guy fought it to get in my class, and he's an idiot, but we'll see. And like, he didn't call me an idiot, but he alluded to me. I should have made a better choice.
Right.
So, that was it.
So obviously you followed quite a different path from, being an English teacher. What caused you to deviate from that original desire?
I graduated high school a year early. I had it so every year I would go to summer school and take a math class. And all of my brothers would be at home goofing off or doing summer stuff or just kind of, just doing summer stuff. And I was bored. So every year I took a math class or I took an English class. And my junior year in high school, the principal called me into his office. And I was one of those Festa boys, right? But I'm like, no, I'm one of the good ones. And he's like, yeah, we'll see. And so he called me into his office and he said, do you have enough credits? You need a half a credit to graduate this year. And you're going to take a half a credit. You're going to take driver's ed. I've already enrolled you. And you're going to get out of my school a year early. And I was like, I already have my driver's license. And he said, well, you're going to pass that. And so that's what I did. So I had very, very little time to plan for college. And I'm going to college to be an English teacher. Like, I'm going to go to college and be an English major. That's it. But I had very little time to plan for it. So the year to, plan for college as a senior and get everything, I didn't really have that. And so when I graduated, I applied for colleges haphazardly. I took the SAT haphazardly, and I got a good score, but it was all really rushed, and I didn't really have any college prospects. I would have had them that next year, and I didn't know what I was going to do. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to join the Army, and I'll use the college money there. And I had 100% planned to join the Army, be there for 4 years, and get the GI Bill, and go be an English teacher. That was it, right? That was 100% it. And then then Desert Storm happened, right? And I was involuntarily extended. So I applied. I actually applied. I said I was going to ETS. And while I was in, my first 4 years, while I was in, I had applied to go to Ranger School, or took the PT test to go to Ranger School, signed up for it. Every time it came around, and because I didn't have 2 years of retainability, and I'm the only person in my unit passing the PT test, but I didn't have that retainability, so they were like, sorry, we're not sending you, right? And I'm like, okay. So Desert Shield happens, we all deploy, I ETS. I'm involuntarily extended indefinitely. I'm in the desert. And
so you're enlisted at the time?
Yeah, I was enlisted at the time. Yeah, I was a cannon crew member. I was artillery, and I had been accepted to college. Everything was set, right? And I was going to get out, and I was going to go be an English teacher, dude. And I got involuntary extended. College came and went. That date came and went, and I was over in Iraq.
So you weren't able to take that opportunity again. So it didn't take the same shape. So because you were extended, that same opportunity wasn't there, or you would have had to reapply, or you just changed your mind because now you're in the military machine and you see what other opportunities are there. How did that happen for you?
No, I got out, and then I get out without a plan, right? I'm like, okay, I'll just do something until I can get back into applying for college and all those things. So I was out of the Army for 9 months, and I worked at a bank in Miami. I was a teller, and now I'm married and I have a kid, and now I have all these responsibilities, and it just wasn't working out. So I called a recruiter and I said, hey, how do I get back in? And I just want to go be an artillery guy, right? Because I was I made E6 in 4 years as an artillery guy, and I was like, okay, I'm doing right over there. That's what I want to do. And he's like, it's not open for you. Sorry. The only thing you can do is go into the 18 X-ray program. And I'm like, I don't think so, dude. I'm Green Beret. I don't want nothing to do with that, right? And nothing. And the guy called me like probably every week, it seemed like every day. And so I went in and I took a language test and I scored high on it. The D-Lab, I think it's called.
Right.
And so, and then he was really calling me and he's like, you got to come. And so I said, you know what? I'll do it. And so I went to go to selection and, sorry.
No worries.
No, so I went to go to selection with this sole intent of, I'm going to go to selection and I'm going to fail out. And then they're going to go send me to be back to my old MOS.
So you went with the intent of failing out?
Failing out, man. I went with the intent of failing out. And so let me back up. While I was in basic training, I got accepted to West Point, right? And then I was like, yep, I'm ready to go. And then they told me the commitment. And I'm like, wait, I give you 1 year, you give me 1 year, I give you 2, right? And they wanted me to go to the pre-course for a year. And I'm like, no, that doesn't get me to be an English teacher. Thank you, no. So I turned that down too. I'm like, I was so adamant about becoming an English teacher. But so now fast forward and I show up to selection and there were 55, and I have no idea why I remember these numbers, but there were 55 guys just like me. And there were 500 people in my selection class, and a sergeant major said, hey, all you 18 x-rays, I want to see you outside. And he's like, you guys have given up on your country once. You're going to give it up on again. You guys are pieces of dirt. And the very second that I get to fail you out of here, I'm going to fail you out of here, and I'm going to discharge you with a less than honorable. And I was like, hold on a second. That's not now it changed. The metric had changed. That's not what I signed up for.
So could he just sense that you guys were planning on failing or just not putting your all in, and he was fed up with it? Or how did he find out? How did he get to that conclusion?
I'm assuming, because selection hadn't started yet. So I'm assuming he just got there from what he'd seen in the past.
Okay.
Right. And I don't even know to this day, did he have the authority to do that? Right. I have no idea. So, but at that point I'm like, I can't get a less than honorable. And so I performed, and 500 people started, about 100 finished, and about 70 got selected. And that's it. Like everyone always thinks, I'm going to go to selection, and you finish selection. There was a guy standing next to me in selection, and I saw him years later. It was his third time through selection, and he had finished all 3 times and didn't get selected all 3 times. And that's all you can, back then, that's all you could do was 3 times. And you can,
okay.
Like now it's different. They make a concession or they give you a medical retry, or they do. I don't know. Like the machine still works. And,
right.
And the people who have studied the machine and all the metrics, they know what they're doing. But, yeah.
Did you learn some things about yourself throughout that process of selection that changed your mentality about certain things, or were you still bent at that point of becoming an English teacher by any roundabout sort of means?
No, the dream of becoming an English teacher had pretty much fallen to the wayside. I had adult responsibilities. So, but as far as like selection in and of itself, I thought it was fun. Like as you're going through it, I'm sure it sucks. But when you look back on anything, you're like, that wasn't that bad. And it wasn't. It was fun. I had a great time. Like I would go back to selection right now if I could, because it was so much fun. And there were people who were just, whatever you put out into the world, that's what you get back. Right. And there are people who are like all doom and gloom, and they're like, oh, this sucks or whatever. And they have a bad time of it. I had a great time. It was great. I overtrained for it because I had no idea what to do, right? None. And so I just trained really hard, and then I got there, and they said this was what the metric was, and I thought, that's it. That's it. I did more than this on my own. Cool. And I had a great time. So
as far as what, like the physical and psychological preparations for the challenges that you faced during SF selection.
So I thought, and so we're not never, and I know people have written books about selection, and so all of the events are out there. And I signed a piece of paper, 25 years ago saying I'm not going to tell you what selection's about, any of the events. So I don't. And so like if you were to tell me, hey man, I'm going to go to selection, what advice would you give me? I tell everyone the same three things and no one believes me. And if you went to selection and then came back, then we talk about all of it, right? But people come back from selection who have asked me advice, and they'll come back and they'll go, out of everybody, that was the best advice that I got. And that was it. And it's so simple. I mean, number one, be where you're supposed to be, do what you're supposed to do. Number two, top to bottom lip contact, speak when spoken to. And number three, I'm going to curse here. I'm sorry.
No,
yeah, don't be a pussy. That's it. Those three things. And people are like, yeah, whatever. But if you look at the average person going to selection, nobody says, hey, I'm going to go to selection on a Friday and it starts on Monday. Everybody has prepared for it in some fashion. You either have prepared enough or not enough, and that's it. And so you can take the physical aspect out of the equation, right? Because if you went to selection and I went to selection, we have trained up for it. So can you run? Yes. Can you row? Yes. Great. So that's a zero. So can you? And so to get back to your original question, sorry.
Sorry.
I read a stat somewhere that said like 80% of the time, someone doesn't answer the question that you actually ask them. And so I kind of pay attention to that. But so I had just thought that, you do a selection event, you wake up at some weird hour, you do a selection event, you take a PT test, you do another selection event, and then like you go do sand pit drills, and you do another event, and just that's your entire day, and that's your entire 21 days. But it's not. You wake up, you do an event, you have lunch, you do an event, and you're done for the day. You're still held accountable for stuff, but you're done for the day. And so I was like, wait a minute, I got to wake up. I get three hours of sleep and 2 events a day, and that's it. And so that was it. And I was like, heck yeah. And I just had a good time, and I'm not always a positive guy, but I was like, well, this is awesome. So,
nice. That's cool. You're like, hey, this is how we're living. And I guess once you accept that psychologically that, hey, this is how things are going to be, then it probably makes it easier and more enjoyable for you than maybe somebody else who's just like, dreading every little thing about it. That probably has a downward spiral effect in their psychological process.
So when I went to OIF 1, like we were the first ones to go. And we started off in...
For those who might not know, what's OIF 1?
Operation Enduring Freedom? No, that's OEF. Operation Iraqi Freedom? Yeah, okay. OIF. I've been to both of them. But we were on the quick response, and so we went and we worked our way from Kuwait up to Baghdad. And it has a point, I promise. And everybody in the unit, and I was a PA at the time, so I was the PA for the unit for Brigade Combat Team, and everyone in the unit's like, oh man, we're going to be here for 3 months. I'm like, this and we'll be home, blah, blah. And that's what everyone was saying. Like the commander's saying it, everybody's saying it. And I was walking around telling everybody, I'm like, hey, we're going to be gone for a year. And like, no, Lieutenant Festa, you don't know. And I'm like, I've done these before. We're going to be gone for a year. Right. And then like, no, and I'm like, get in your head. We're going to be gone for a year. 3 months would come, and then I'm like, oh, hey, it's going to be 4 months, And then 4 months, it's going to be 5 months. And then at the 6-month mark, they were like, okay, excuse me, it's going to be a year. And everybody for like 3 weeks was just hanging their head low. And they were like, oh, woe is me, oh, boo-hoo. And I'm getting divorced and my life is turning this way. And I'm like, I told everybody here, it's going to be a year. And I was fine. Like I was like, woo, right on. But I knew going into it, that's what I had planned for. So yeah, if you just get into that mindset, this is what it's going to be, then nothing is that bad.
I would equate that, it's a lot similar to any run that you've done in the military where, exactly what I'm going to say here, where, you think you're going to end at a certain point, and then, whatever your team leader, your sergeant, takes you, keeps on trucking past that. And it's the people that, didn't think about that as being a possibility that end up, falling behind or falling out. And, the others that are just like, okay, that, either the others who thought about it beforehand or the ones who are just like, yeah, whatever, this is how we're living. We're going to keep on trucking, that do well. But I think, you can apply that to pretty much anything in life, like the deployment you guys had there.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
There was a there was one cadre guy in selection, and in selection they don't give you positive reinforcement, they don't give you negative reinforcement. I was roster number 65. That's all I was to somebody, and I have my little tab somewhere that says roster number 65, and I'm in the laws. I'm forgotten, right? But there was one cadre guy. He took us on a run on occasion, and if you're running slow enough, everyone starts talking and yapping, right? And so, like, if you can talk, and nobody got it. Every time we would slow down, people would start talking. He'd be like, "Okay, well, we're speeding up," like no one got it. And you'd go on like an 8-mile run, and then you're in the middle of nowhere in the woods, and you come back and you can see the compound, and you're like, "Oh, right?" And then he passes it, and he passes it by like 2 miles, and you're like, oh. And people fall out, and like people are gone. Like as soon as you stop in selection, you just sit down, you're done, right? You don't get to
pack up your bags and head out.
And they don't. They're no one's like, "Oh my God, you suck." They're like, "Hey man, thanks," and he turns around, and you see the compound again. You're like, "Oh my God." And he passes it again. Now he passes it by a mile, and a couple more people drop, and he just kept passing. And later on in life, I was a cross country coach for a local high school in Fayetteville for Terry Sanford, and
that's a high school I graduated from.
Oh, is it? Yeah. So I would do a gut run. And I always ran with the students. I never was one of those coaches to say, "Hey, go run 5 miles and go back." And we would go. So we would go out. We'd come out of the school and take a right.
Yeah.
And then we'd go like to Pate. I think it's Pate Street, the very first right.
Okay.
And we'd turn around and we'd run the D of the parking lot that goes right by the front door of the school.
Yeah.
And then we'd run to the next street. And we'd come back down and we'd do that D and we'd go to the next one. And it did it like 5 times. And then we'd come back that way, we'd do a pyramid out and back. And I'm like, okay, when you get around and you're at the school and you think you have to pee, you don't. When you think that your leg hurts, it doesn't. When you think that, and it was a gut run, and we did one every Monday. And so I took that from that guy. So yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. My dad, I think we talked about it in the podcast I did with my dad, but when I skipped school one time as my punishment, it was the excuse I used was that, it was, rainy, cold, didn't want to walk the 1.5 miles or 2 miles to school. So he was like, "All right, you're going to be down here, tomorrow morning." It was a Saturday morning. He was going to be down here tomorrow morning, your PT gear, 6 o'clock. I think I was late. And, he, so that just added to him being even more pissed off. And he ended up running me down to the school, but that was one of the mental tricks too. Like he ran me past it and all the way down to, I think it's Honeycutt, and turned me back around, then got me onto the tennis court. And by that time there was a layer of slush out in the tennis court that was just this nasty, snowy sleet mixture, and then had me doing all kinds of drills and, ran me back. But I appreciate him for that, for, it's kind of teaching me those kind of, good mental and psychological, things that in order to be, successful with stuff and not let it, set you back. Going back to SF selection, I would imagine that getting your Green Beret was quite the, how did that feel for you?
It's weird because people, you put on a Green Beret and people think, like the students, like if you're a dirtbag and you're a dirtbag with a Green Beret, you're still a dirtbag, right? It's not instant strength. It's not instant knowledge. It's not instant anything. You're still the person that you were. You just wear a different hat. And so I never, it was a great accomplishment. Don't misunderstand. I'm like, yep, I'm a Green Beret, woo, but I was never the person who said, I'm a Green Beret, and it never defined me, right? So I equate it to being a Harley owner, right? If you own a Harley, then it's almost inherent that you have to have all of the Harley leather and the lifestyle and you just can't own a Harley and ride it in flip-flops, right? Like right. You could a Suzuki. I think a Green Beret for me was the same way. Like it didn't change who I was. It was, and there are guys, man, who like, they have the big SF ring and they drive around in convertibles and they can't take it off because it's part of their identity. And even now, guys who I served with, that I see years down the road, it's still a huge, huge part of their life. It's a big part of my life. Don't misunderstand it. I'm not like bad mouthing it. but it was just a part of my life. It was a phase of my life, and I'm very proud of my service. I'm proud of all the things I did as a Green Beret. But I was just a big kid in the Army, given big kid toys to go play with. And that's really how I looked at it. So, and I did a lot of great things. I've been all over South and Central America. But it was just something that I did. And I don't look, it's easy to look back and go, man, I did something really big that very, very few people do. But when you're going through it, okay, you're just there, you're going through it.
Okay. Yeah. It's just part of life.
It's just part of life. It's part of what you're doing.
So you went on from that and you became a PA or a physician's assistant later on. What was that process like for you?
So like you're going to find out, like, my entire life, one, I'm the luckiest person in the world, and two, I've fallen into everything that has happened. So I'm a Green Beret, but I'm not a SF medic, right? I'm a weapons sergeant. So everyone who knows me, who's like, oh, he's a Green Beret, they think that I was 18 Bravo.
I assume that as well. Yeah.
But they also think that I was in the infantry. Oh, okay. Because that's an 18 Bravo, right? But I was in artillery, and then because I was combat arms, they made me. They're like, you're going to be a Bravo, and I got into an argument with my team sergeant, and so I walked over. I said, I'm done talking to you, and it was because he did the wrong thing, and it was something that was right 10 years ago, but it was wrong then, and it was just that standard, and so I called him on it, and he John Wayne'd me and said, this is how it was. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not how it is. So we got into this huge argument, and I said, you know what? I'm done. I'm going to go have lunch, and we'll talk about this later. I went over to the battalion. I went over to the S1, and I said, hey, how do I get off my team? And an E4, don't know the guy's name, said, put in a packet to go to the 18 Delta course, go, fail out. You'll come right back here, and you'll go to your team. Which just now hits me how familiar that sounds to me going to selection.
Right, yeah.
So I fill the paperwork out right there, and I go to Fort Sam Houston, because back then that's where the 18 Delta course was. So I go to the 18 Delta course, and our first test is like within the first month or two, and my pride kicked in, and I ended up graduating the 18 Delta course as the third highest GPA, and then I went to a different team back in 7th group, and so that was that. But I was on my team for about I was a Green Beret for about 10 years, just a little bit under, and I went on a medical mission while everyone's in red cycle and they're off taking leave or going to schools. If you're the 18 Delta, you go back to South America, and you go work in a clinic there. One of the missions I happened to go to. We took a bunch of doctors down there, and as the 18 Delta, I was their liaison, and I would see patients if they got bogged down, and then I'd go see patients for the dentist if you got bogged down, and that was it. But there was a nurse there, and he was an 18 Delta who had gone to nursing school, and he's like, and I was taking a couple of classes just to take classes, and he said, "Are you going to PA school?" And I said, "I'm thinking about it," and he said, "Well, you're never going to go. If you're thinking about it, you're never going to go." And I said, "Yeah, whatever, dude." And he's like, No, really. If you're going to go, as soon as you have all of the requirements to go, put the packet in. Trust me. And I said, okay. And then so I got back from that mission, and I ended up getting all the requirements for PA school. And my team leader at the time said, "Are you going to go?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Okay, I'm going to give you a month off. I don't want to see you. Put anything in front of me to sign. I'll sign it. Get your packet together. Do the best packet. Let me see it, and then send it off." And so that's what I did. And I got picked up. I got picked up for PA school. So and that same team sergeant, right? I saw him years and years later, and we had lunch together. And when he retired, he opened up a welding shop, and I needed some welding done, and I called somebody, and it was him. And I'm like, "Oh, shoot." So he's like, "Yeah, come on down, we'll have lunch." And, everything was rose tinted glasses then, Right. And we're having lunch, and there's some old men that are it's like an old diner, right, with old men in it. Like, I'm the youngest guy in there. And he's like, "Yeah, man, he turned out okay. He's a PA now." And I knew he had better potential, so I made sure he went to 18 Delta course. And I was like, okay, friend, and that's fine. However you want to paint history, I'm sure my version of it is very different from his. And I'm sure both of our versions are very different from the actual truth.
All right. It sounded like he was proud of you and wanted to accept some responsibility for your success.
Yeah. He was always a nice guy. We had just gotten into that argument.
Okay.
Just that one, it's not like he was a bad team sergeant or anything. He wasn't my best team sergeant, but he was a good team sergeant. And we just got into one argument, and that was it. So,
what are some of the highlights or the most valuable lessons you learned or treasured memories from your military experience?
So there were two things that I think, like, whenever you get an award, you just accept it because you get an award usually for something that's stupid. But it was all the stuff that you did when nobody was looking, right? That where you did do the right thing. And I think that's what we really get awards for. But in Iraq, in OIF 1, I walked into, I got tired of laying on a cot in Baghdad in my own ball sweat, right? I mean, I did. And I was like, there's got to be a better way. And so I went and volunteered to be the money guy to build stuff. So I was seeing patients at night when they would come in from ambushes or, movement to contacts or whatever. And then during the day, I was doing money stuff. And I wanted to rebuild our fob. I wanted AC. I just wanted AC.
Oh,
man.
right.
That was it. Like, I'd love to tell you there's this big altruistic. Nope, I just wanted AC.
You didn't want sweaty balls.
I didn't want sweaty balls, man. And so I go down to the contracting office, and lo and behold, the guy who's running the contract office is, and I don't even care how stereotypical this is, he was a former Green Beret. He's running finance. He's got a pinky ring on, and it's the crest. It's a SF ring, but it's on his pinky. His hair is slicked back. He's got an Italian last name like I do. And
is it on his pinky because he gained more weight? Is that what the...
No, I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe. No, because he was actually a kind of svelte dude. But he was all connections, right? And I just started doing stuff, and he just started giving me more and more money. And like the day the ACs came in to the entire fob, like 2,000 AC units came in, right? And we put them in every room. And so that was a really big day, and I felt good about that. But I walked into a computer store because I needed a computer, and we needed for our my brigade commander, my battalion commander, would let me do stuff as long as he got his stuff. So when I bought a sat phone that he had, he looked the other way when I bought PT uniforms or I bought shoes.
This is still while you're in OIF?
OIF 1. Okay. And so like all of our gear hasn't caught up to us. Okay. It's still in Connexes. And so like I would buy running shoes for soldiers doing PT who didn't have them. So they didn't have to run in their boots because they're doing PT on a fob and they're running in a circle and they're doing it in their uniform, but they didn't have shoes. So I would just start buying shoes for people and nobody questioned it. Like the battalion commander didn't question it because he had a sat phone. He'd call home anytime he wanted, that type of thing. And he was a good guy as well. But I walked into this computer store and this guy named Ahmed had computers in the back. In the front, it looked like just, a bombed out piece of shit place. And he had everything I needed, everything. And I would always pay him. And he was like, here, take this laptop. And I'm like, I can't. And he's like, don't take it. And I'm like, it's against the law. It's against the rules, right? And I saw people taking money to give to contractors. And then like the contractor turn around and give 25% of that back to the soldier because that's their custom. And someone tried to do that to me. And I'm like, I can't do it. No. And he's like, no, but this is our custom. And I'm like, my custom is not going to jail. My custom's doing the right thing. We're not going to do this. And I know one guy who ended up buying his girlfriend a Mercedes-Benz cash.
Just from all those kind of transactions?
Just from kickbacks like that. And I'm like, God, and he ended up getting busted. And everyone who I knew that did that ended up getting busted, right? And I got audited. When I got audited, I was like, here, it's all right here. And anyway, so I walk into the computer store, and the guy did everything that I needed. He did everything for our fob. He was great. And I was somewhat instrumental in getting him to the States. And so now he lives in Georgia, and I go and see him like once every 5 years, very, very rarely.
Wow.
But he and his entire family, and when I go there, like they throw this huge spread, and they invite their entire family over because I'm the guy that changed his life. Right?
Wow. That's really cool.
I didn't get an award for it. I didn't get a certificate of anything for it. I didn't get a handshake for it. Right? But I know that I did it.
Yeah, it's that kind of selfless service to others that, I'm sure it gives you that sense of satisfaction and,
So there's that. And then there's one other instance in the Army that I did something very similar. And like those, for me, those are my two highlights of my career. Out of all the stuff that I've done, that's it. Those two things. And it was selfless service. I don't look at it that way. I don't consider it that way, but it was just the right thing to do. And if I never said anything about it, no one would ever know. I'm good with that.
Yeah, that's super cool. And, that's one of the things that I've recognized about you early on, not just how you interacted with me, but how you interact with pretty much everybody that, I've seen you come in contact with, is that you are very selfless. You're very selfless with your time or, with your expertise and your services. And, we all appreciate that very much. We'll get back to that later, but I want to, before we get too far ahead, I want to talk about how you got your start in skydiving. That happened while you were in the military, right? And how did you find out about it? What inspired you to do it, and what was your student progression like? So
I'm a PA, and I am I go to do. Let me get this right. I'm a PA, and I have to go to Clark Clinic like once or twice a week and do PHAs. And that's when PHAs were first starting to get kind of big. And you would have to schedule them. And so Laura Dickmeyer.
Those are physical health assessments, right?
Yes.
Just for people that don't know,
So Laura Dickmeyer is my patient, right? And I go.
Who was on the Golden Knights?
She was on the no. She was not. She was not on the Golden Knights at the time, right? And her boyfriend at the time, Jason Spanicchia, was on the Black Daggers.
Okay.
That parachute team. And so I couldn't do, for whatever reason, her PHA. And I said, look, I can't do it right now, and I know you waited a long time to see me. Here's my personal number. I'm not hitting on you. Call this, and you can come to my aid station, my brigade aid station, as I was a brigade PA at the time. And if you come there, I'll just knock out your PHA. I'm on the wrong computer. And she said, okay. So she came, and I knocked it out. And she's like, my boyfriend's an 18 Delta, and so, can he come down here and talk to you? And I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. So he came down, and he said, look, I'm on the Black Daggers, and we're, how many? I think there are like 12 people. Nothing greater than 20.
Right.
And which I'll touch on that in a minute. But he said, I have trouble getting meds and getting supplies. And I was like, okay, cool. And I walked him over to my pharmacy. I opened the door, and I said, help yourself. And he said, dude, you don't know me. And I said, it's okay. Help yourself. And he's like, you're going to trust me in here as an 18 Delta alone. And I said, yeah, help yourself. Take what you need. Don't take what you don't need. It's always here. So, and I walked out. And, I fully expected him to take the Santa Claus bag and just go, but he didn't. He took what he needed. And he realized that it was there for the taking, and it wasn't going anywhere. And so he was like, hey, can I teach you how to skydive in exchange? And I said, no, I'm okay. I don't want anything to do with it. I'm fine. And so he's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. And so he said, and then one day he was like, hey, I have to teach somebody to keep my license. Can I teach you how to skydive? And I'm like, okay. If it'll help you out, you can teach me how to skydive. And so he did. I got hooked up with Dewey, and Dewey gave me a first jump course, and you know Dewey.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's Dewey. And so Dewey's like, oh, you're a jump master? Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, you do this. Yeah. Look at that sleeve. And it's Dewey. So he's like, yeah, you dumbass, you do that. You know, it's Dewey.
He knew his audience.
Yeah, exactly. And so now the next day I go out to, I want to say it was Laurenburg. I don't know where it was. No, it doesn't matter. And I jump out of the plane, and it's the daggers. It was at Rayford. It was at
Okay.
Yeah, and you pack according to your plane. So if you want to be on every lift, learn to pack faster. But at this point, I wasn't packing, so I made the first jump, and they're like, "Hey, how was that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it sucked. I don't really care to do this. This sucks." And they're like, "Okay, well, get back on the plane." So I get back on the plane, and they're like, "Hey, how was that?" And I was like, they brief you, they tell you what you did right, what you did wrong, and I'm like, "Yeah, it still sucks."
Did you do AFF or the static line progression method?
No, AFF.
Okay.
So it was Dewey on one side and Jason on the other.
Okay.
And then,
so accelerated free fall with a jump master on each side of you.
Yeah. And apparently I couldn't come out of a right hand spin the entire time. I didn't see it, as a student. And I always tell people that when you're skydiving, like if you're doing a tandem or it's your very first skydive as a student, everything you see is like looking through a little...
Yeah, like a
paper towel roll.
Paper towel roll.
Yeah. So, and I tell people who are doing tandem, I'm like, look, a tandem is, just think of it as like teenage sex, right? You're trying to look cool and you don't. You have no idea what you're doing. It's over way too fast. And you go, man, that was really cool. I'd like to do it again. Right. And so, and you see everything through this. Right. So, and that was kind of like my first 6 jumps. And then on my 7th jump, something changed. Like the paper towel roll was here, and I could see stuff. And then I vividly remember, and then so after that I was hooked. And then I vividly remember my 25th jump, my check dive. And it was a hop and pop. It was I did my check dive on my 24th, and then I just had to do a 25th one. And so it was a hop and pop. And like I got out, and you could see, I could see that guy, and they're just all up, and everything was just really surreal, and it was all open, and I was like, I'm one with this, and not to like be zen-y or anything like that, but I was like, I'm there, and so that's how I got into skydiving. But how I got into the Golden Knights and the Black Daggers was largely driven by SF, because I was on a 12-man team, right? And we wanted to go get gear from somewhere. And so we went down to DRMO. I don't know what the acronym stands for.
Defense Reutilization Management Office, I believe.
Sure, we're good with that. But it's a place where units turn in a bunch of gear. And so if you want to get gear, you can get free gear there. And so I was on a mountain team at the time with that old crusty team sergeant. And he like, hey, watch this trick. We're going to go get all this cool mountain gear. And so we went down there, and we like did all the paperwork. We did everything. And we went down there, and the guy was like, this is awesome, man. We're going to give away all this mountain gear. We just get it off our books. And he's like, where's your unit? And we were like, we're here. And he's like, there's only 12 of you. Yeah, it's the unit. This is our team. And he was like, we are designed to give this out to like 300 people, not 12.
Right.
Have a nice day.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so we didn't get any gear, right?
And so he wasn't willing just to parcel some out.
No, because he was going to go from having this inventory to not having this inventory to now having this inventory, having to count it and then recount it, because now there's stuff out of it. And, and then I thought, when Jason came along and he's like, hey man, I just got it's just me and these, however many people are in the Black Daggers. And I felt that pain, because he was like, I can't get anything done. And I felt that pain. Right. And then when I started helping, I started helping out the 82nd team for the same reason. Right. And I was in the 82nd. And then it just kind of bled on into helping out, like all the skydivers talk. And so then someone from the Golden Knights called and said, hey man, I got your name from so-and-so. Can you help me out? Yeah, sure. Because I know like you guys are from a small unit. So just think like if you're on an SF team, you go to South America, you're gone for 6 months, you come back and you're trying to get something done, and you get an appointment, and then that appointment's 2 months from now, and you're going to be gone again, right? Now equate that to being on a demo team, right? How hard is it for you guys when you come back to get an appointment to go to something, whatever it is, right? Whether it's dental, medical, or some type of supply or S1 or whatever. And I just kind of always felt that pain, and anywhere that I could relieve that, and I did. So that's really how I got to know you guys, and that's it.
Yeah, that's incredible. I want to ask you a question about that a little bit later, but before we get that far, I want to ask you what some highlights of your skydiving career have been so far.
I got to go to Dubai for the 2012
the World Championships.
World Championships. Yeah. And I was, and I got to jump the palm twice, 3 times, and I got to do it. So BK was like every day. BK was like, bring your gear. Right. And one day I'm just sitting down and I'm in a polo shirt, a pair of shorts, and some Birkenstocks, and BK's like, get your gear. They need a wind dummy, and because they were moving it from one area to another. Right.
I think they had it on the main drop zone for a while there at the airport, and then they moved it out to the outer ring of the Palm Island, right?
Yes, but this one was for a different discipline, and they were jumping on the ring, but closer to shore.
Right. Yeah, that was for style and accuracy, I believe.
That's right. Yeah. And so I got this helicopter jump, like great helicopter jump into Dubai, and I'm like literally in. I don't have a helmet. I had an altimeter, and I'm in Birkenstocks, and whoop, how'd I go? And it was really good. I had a great time. And then
there's some cool visuals in that jump too, right? Because you're right, kind of over the marina in downtown there, and just all the high-rise buildings and everything, the water.
My YouTube video has us flying over a huge yacht, and then the bigger yacht.
Yeah, they had the King's yacht.
Exactly.
They're using as a projector.
That's what we were with. I'm like, holy cow, man, that's huge. And so I got to jump the Palm 3 times, and the entire Dubai trip in and of itself was just.
Yeah, it was incredible.
A once in a lifetime trip. Yeah. I've gotten to. I met Colonel Kittinger, and I had like a 30-minute conversation.
Kittinger.
Yeah, Joe Kittinger. I had a conversation with him for like 30 minutes, and I met. I want to say it's Lou Sanborn. Mm-hmm. And he signed my logbook. A1, D1. Mm-hmm. It was jump 402 for me. Like I know exactly where it is in my logbook. I really just like the good people that you meet along the way. Jumping is jumping, and who I'm going to say this, and people who don't jump will not understand it. But after a certain point, you're like, oh, I'm jumping again today. And it's not that it's a job, but if you're like you're doing tandems, it is a job. And you're like, oh, hey, how you doing? You have to make that connection with someone, and then jump them, and then go make that connection with the next person. And at the end of the day, you're just mentally drained. So jumping is just jumping. That part is cool. It's exciting, but it's really the people that you kind of meet along the way, and the cool stuff you get to do with them along the way. Like I was in a boogie in Puerto Rico, and there's a guy, Mike Daniel. Not sure if you know him or not. He and I have an incredible story of some debauchery that I'm not going to tell you, but it's an awesome tale. And I would have never had that experience had I not, been skydiving. So.
Right. Yeah. A lot of the experiences I have traveling around the world, are because of skydiving. They facilitated that for sure. And, meeting incredible people along the way. And that's definitely the highlight. And what keeps me involved in it now, it's the dynamic of each team that you have, during competition, the personalities on that team, and, helping, all move toward one collective goal. Yeah, it's just incredible.
I also liked being, I liked being the fluff girl. No, the fluff guy. The fluff guy. I think it's the fluff guy for BK in the wind tunnel where, and you were there, but when you guys were training, BK would call me up and go, hey man, you want to hang out in the wind tunnel for a while? And then like you guys would train, and then you'd come out of the tunnel after being there for a minute, and then I jump in, and it would be just me, right? Where does that happen in anyone's life? And then BK would just kind of give me the look, and I'm like, whoop, I'm out. And then you guys would be back in, and we would do that for like 30 minutes. And then BK would come over and go, hey man, I noticed that, while you're doing this, just move your hand like that. And just trust me.
Right.
And just move your hand like that, whatever. And you're like, okay, whatever, BK. And then you get in there the next time and you're like,
hey, that works.
So, but it's like cool stories like that. Skydiving is the catalyst to those cool stories or those cool interactions. And yeah, and whatever that discipline is, whether it's skateboarding or it's mountain biking or whatever, if you seek them out and the good people in them, you'll have those good stories.
Yeah, for sure. And BK is an awesome person. He recognizes, other incredible people and, is willing to invite them into the fold, into, whatever we're doing. And
don't accuse me of that. He used me for my medical prowess, and that was it.
The position you had on the U.S. Army parachute team was extremely important, in my opinion, and that can't be overstated. How did you become involved with the team? You talked about that a little bit, but can you describe the role that you had within the organization and why you felt it was important to have that position for the team and for yourself?
For me, being on there, and I'm an honorary Golden Knight, and I've been assigned through all these backdoor channels to the Golden Knights, and one can say that I was a Golden Knight. I've gone to another drop zone jumping, and I one of my jumpsuits is just all black, and then my parachute container is all black. And I was somewhere, and someone's like, "Oh, are you Golden Knight?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not. No, I don't ever pretend to do that." I was like, I was a PA on the Golden Knights, but I am not a Golden Knight. And then like 3 minutes later, some guy walks up and he's like, hey, Charlie, hey, Charlie. And this is Scott. Yeah, he's a Golden Knight. And I'm like, no, I'm not, And then,
we would disagree with you a little bit because everyone plays a role, into helping the team overall in general. And you played a very significant role in that, but I appreciate your humility.
There's a difference between being a Golden Knight and being on the Golden Knights. Right. And I recognize that. And I never try to be, my life is so great, right? And I've done so many cool things that I don't need to embellish it. I don't need to brag. I don't need to, I was on the Golden Knights. And I came to be on them unofficially. I think I was your PA unofficially for like 5 years.
Yeah, a long time.
But when I was working at the hospital, the deputy commander who was the chief of ortho, and I worked in the orthopedic department, I was his fat Tony. So like he would go, hey Scott, I need something done, and it would always be a quiet thing, whatever. And I'd
make it happen.
And I'd go get it done. Right. And it didn't matter what it was. And he and I would get into arguments and stuff, but he was a full bird colonel, and like we would be F you this and F you that, and but I took care of him and he took care of me. And then he became the deputy commander of the hospital. And he was a propaganda whore, right? And he knew that I saw you guys. And so he was like, he drafted a memorandum of agreement, an MOA, with you guys. And so I was officially y'all's PA for 2 years, 1 day a week there. But I was your PA anytime, which is a really useful monkey to have if you're a skydiver, to have a monkey in ortho, like right there. You just have that right into the orthopedics, and it's skydiving. So there's always ortho stuff going on. So, but Monday morning, I would have to wear my and so like I wasn't there one Monday because I was with you guys. And he called me into his office and he was like, hey, Scott, where were you? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, this is how it's going to go. Monday morning, you're in your black and gold and you have breakfast in the hospital. You talk to anybody who wants to talk to you. And then you go to headquarters and treat, the Golden Knights and do everything there. Lunch, you have lunch in the hospital. And you have it in your black and gold, and you talk to anybody, and when they ask, how'd you get here? I got you there, right? And so, and there was no illusions, and I knew that facilitating him facilitated what I wanted to do, so I didn't really care about the credit. If like when we got a new senior PA in the 82nd, and he was not from the 82nd, I applied for the job, he got it. He came from Oklahoma. Took the job, had no idea what it was like to be in the 82nd. And for the probably first 2 or 3 months of his tenure, he would call me all the time and go, hey, how do I do this? And then we would talk about it. And then he would implement whatever idea that I had, and he would get the credit for it. But I didn't care about that. Like the idea and the movement forward was what mattered. So I didn't care that Jeff Morgan got all the credit for me doing Golden Knight stuff, right? Because he furthered my career. Excuse me. I furthered his, and everybody moved forward. You know, the saying where a rising tide lifts all boats. Right. That was Jeff Morgan, right? And some people hated him. I didn't. I liked him. I knew what kind of person he was. I knew how I could further my agenda by furthering his. I was good with it. And so that's really how I got into being the Golden Knight PA officially, because of Jeff Morgan and his propaganda machine.
Well, that's great. And then for others who might be looking, you know, in similar shoes as you were at the time, that might be looking to fill that position, it's definitely a position on the team that is, I would say, as a former team member, when I was on the team, it was highly sought after, because we always had, you know, as far as our work tempo went and our training went, just like you were saying, you know, we didn't have a whole lot of time to make appointments and to stop training, you know, which would shut the team down if one of us left, essentially to go get these medical appointments. So if there's anybody else out there who's looking for that kind of position, maybe that's a way to go about it, because I don't think there's still I could be wrong, but I don't think there's a position just for the team for that.
I knew the hospital filled it after me twice, but I don't know now what it is.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the situation now is either. I can't speak to that. But now I want to talk about your sense of service, because to me, you seem to have a highly developed sense of service. Is that a quality and value you've always possessed, or is it something that you've developed over time, or is it something you just don't really realize about yourself and you just do out of a core sense of goodness in your heart?
That's a deep question. I'm going to tell you, Mr. Stallings, Mr. Stallings, and I just want to do better. Like those two things. Like I want to do better, and if I know that I'm doing better, then someone else is doing better, or if I can do better to make someone else better.
Mr. Stallings was your English teacher, right?
Yeah. And I've tried to find him years ago, you know, to just say thank you, and he gets fired so often. You know what I mean? That
it's hard to track him down.
It was very hard to track him down. And a friend of mine that I went to high school with became an English teacher. And I contacted him. I'm like, how do I get a hold of him? And he's like, oh, he kind of bounces around. And last I heard, he was doing something, and that was years ago. So I may never, I don't even know his first name, right? Like I looked him up in the yearbook, and he's so transient that he was never in any of the yearbooks.
Wow.
Right. So like, I don't even know what his first name was.
For any teachers though, that just goes to show you the level of leadership and the example that can have on someone throughout their
you'll never know
lives. Yeah.
You know, like you never know that impact that you'll have on any one given person. Yeah.
Yeah. That's super powerful. Over the many years I've known you, you've consistently demonstrating the willingness to prioritize helping others when they need it most. And I'm definitely one of those people. Throughout my military and civilian skydiving career, you've helped to keep me airworthy by helping to minimize my pain and maximize my effectiveness, my physical and thereby mental readiness. I'd like to take this opportunity to express my heartfelt gratitude to you for that. You know, I really appreciate it. You know, without your invaluable assistance, I don't think I would have been able to continue training and competing throughout my 40s. And, you know, as I approach 50 here, you know, I'm definitely falling apart in some areas, and you've helped to, kind of glue me back together in certain ways. And one of the successful methods of treatment that you've used on me recently is PRP, and I've been really surprised when I talk to people about it, how they haven't heard of the procedure. So I was wondering if you could describe the treatment and its effects.
Yeah. I personally think there's a really good reason why people don't hear a whole lot about PRP. And without to get too political or too in the weeds or anything, but PRP.
If you could be a little closer to the microphone, just to make sure we hear you.
Oh, okay. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So PRP because I get my source material from you. So I draw your blood, I spin it down, and I take some plasma where I separate the plasma from the red blood cells. I take that plasma and then I inject it into you in a joint or a soft tissue, and it's full of growth hormones. It's full of platelets. It's full of stem cells. It could be argued that they're actual stem cells or they're not. It doesn't matter. But it just promotes healing, right? And everything has a cost. There's a payment for everything, but it promotes healing, and it has very, very few side effects, and it has almost none that I can think of. But the reason that it's not discussed or well known is insurance companies don't take it. They don't recognize it.
Is it because it's your own material?
It's
your
not
own
that
plasma?
it's because of your own, and I can't prove this. I'm going to say this, and someone's going to want to sue me. Maybe, I don't know. But if Big Pharma, if I do a steroid injection on your knee, I'm injecting 2 forms of anesthesia, lidocaine and marcaine, and a steroid, whether it's Kenalog or Celestone, or it doesn't matter. So I'm using 3 medications on you. Somebody other than you is benefiting from that, right? Financially. So I think it's a great idea for the pharmaceutical companies to pressure insurance companies to say, you shouldn't cover this. And so PRP injections range out of pocket anywhere from like $800 to a couple thousand, depending on where you are in the country and where that injection's going, right? Like a knee is a lot less expensive than a spine, and a muscle is a lot less expensive than a knee, right? So, excuse me. So you have to pay for it out of pocket. So it's not well known, because as a healthcare provider, if I'm trying to get my bottom dollar or my bottom line healthy, and you come into an ortho clinic and I say, hey man, you can do this steroid injection and you're going to pay the copay of $50, or you can have this other treatment and I'm going to charge you $800. Which one are you going to pick? Right. And so now I'm just going to talk more and more about the one that is going to be the most financial beneficially to both of us.
Gotcha.
So I don't think that's I think that's why that they're not as commonplace. Yeah.
Okay. Is there, in your opinion, is that method of treatment, PRP, any better, any worse than similar treatments such as the cortisone injections that you mentioned? Or
No, it's not my opinion at all. You can look at study after study. You can go to Google Scholar and do research and compare them. So I was going to actually do my doctoral thesis on the comparison of the two of them, but I don't think I'll get published, because pharmaceutical or most journals are owned by pharmaceutical companies.
okay.
So I don't think that me printing or submitting an article that says, hey, PRP is vastly better than a steroid injection. Yeah, I don't think they'll do that.
I know, just of my experience with it is that, man, it's been incredible for the state of my left hip. I got the replacement of my right, and before that, you had given me, and I've gone to other physicians to get cortisone injections several times, and it was my understanding that with the cortisone injections, after a while, it starts to actually break down the tissue. Is that correct?
It does. So you can get 8 consecutive injections 90 days apart before you have to start doing something else. And before I did PRP, like before I found it, I would do steroid injections. And now, if you ask me, I always start with PRP.
Yeah, I remember when you first gave me PRP, I think I went in requesting a cortisone injection from you. You were like, you can do that or you can do this. And you explained that more to me. And I was like, yeah, that option sounds a lot better.
Yeah.
And so far it has been. It's been great. I don't think just like I said, I don't think I'd be able to still keep going the way I have been if it hadn't been for your assistant.
Yeah, and I don't advertise that I do PRP injections. Like, I'm certified to do them. I've done them for years. But the business that I own, I don't want to be known as the PRP guy.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
And so I do PRP injections for people who I know I have to know you for a while. I'm like, hey, and then I'll knock it out. But I don't. It's not the mainstay of my
Right, gotcha.
my practice.
And I want to ask you some questions about your practice and how you've reinvented yourself in a little bit. But the next question I want to ask, or the next topic I want to talk about, is one of the many ways that you serve others is through fundraising efforts for St. Jude's Research Children's Hospital. You've done some incredibly intensive physical and mental endurance challenges to help raise money and awareness for that cause. Aside from the reasons of fundraising and increasing awareness, what are some of your other motivations for doing these challenges, and why have you picked St. Jude's as your beneficiary?
So I'm gonna handle the last part of the question first.
Okay.
So it's going to sound cavalier, but I summited Mont Blanc one year, right? And it was cool. I summited Mont Blanc, woo! And then I came down and I thought, okay, what do I want to do next? And I had always wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail, which I did, but it was one of those things that when I retire from the Army, I'm going to hike the Appalachian Trail. And I retired from the Army in November, and you can't get on the trail until you want to be on the trail. It's in the spring if you're going to start it. And the end point in Maine doesn't open until I think July 1st. So you just can't go, and it closes in September. I think it's October 1st. So like if you wanted to finish the Appalachian Trail now, you couldn't do it.
Okay.
So there's this weird kind of window. So from November until March, when I was going to start it, I was just talking about it, right? And someone said, hey, you should do a GoFundMe site for it. And I was like, okay. And I had read, then I started looking at people's blogs or vlogs, and people were doing GoFundMe sites to pay for their Appalachian Trail trip. And I thought, well, I don't need to do that. And I thought, let me do it for a charity, right? And this guy was like, do it for a Wounded Warrior Project or somebody else like that. And it was right about the time when Wounded Warrior Project had that scandal about how much money that they were misusing. Now, I understand that everything's cleared up and they're back to being a great organization. I don't know. But I just started Googling charities that the most money went to the actual reason. And it was in time and time again, it was St. Jude's. So I think it's either 92 or 96 pennies for every dollar that's donated goes to what it's supposed to do. So I think it's 96. But let's keep me honest and say 92. So that 8 cents goes to the administrative costs, right? Stuff that's not being medical treatment. and that was the highest one. And I'm like, okay, well, kids with cancer. Yeah, that's the one. I'll do that. Right. And so that's how I picked them, And then as far as like, how do I pick and choose stupid things to do? I was hiking the Appalachian Trail, right? And it was happening during COVID. So the first 17 days on the trail, right? It's 17, 18, something. Doesn't matter. That was the first 17 days on the trail. I pulled into Hot Springs, North Carolina, and I go to a hostel, and it's like supposed to be one of these great hostels. Like if you're going to hike the trail, when you get to Hot Springs, go to this hostel. And I go to this hostel, and this lady like opens the door, and she peeks out like this, and she's like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "I don't know. What am I doing here?" I'm like, hoping to get a room. She's like, "It's closed. Everything's closed." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "Haven't you heard the news?" And I'm like, "No, man. I've been hiking. I've been living in the woods." And everything closed because of COVID.
Oh, man.
So I got stuck in Hot Springs for like 2 days, right? And there's, I go to this flea bag hotel, right? I think it's a motel. And like there's just hikers sitting outside their room, And I'm like, hey, and they're in the same situation. And I'm like, man, I need a room. And one of the hikers gives me his phone. He says, call this number. And so I called the number, and I'm getting way off track. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
But I call this number, and they say, make sure you have a reservation, because you couldn't sell a room unless you had a reservation.
Okay.
And this lady answers, and she says, "Hey, I said, hey, I need a room." And she's like, "Do you have a reservation?" I'm like, "Yes." And she said, "Last name?" And I went, "Festa." And she's like, "Oh yeah, I have it right here." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." And then she's like, "Okay, just here's the combination to the room." And it was the last room. And she said, just stay there for as long as, I'm going to charge you for one night, but stay there for as long as you need to until you can get out. You know, she gave me like 3 or 4 days. And so I was stuck there for like 2 days, and then I got out. This is going somewhere. And then I was off the trail for like 2 months. And now it's time to get back on the trail. And my legs are no longer like trail legs. They're not conditioned.
So you hadn't been training for that time. Okay.
And I'm like, you know what? I think I'm just going to get on my elliptical machine, and I'm just going to walk. And I think I'm going to do and I thought, you know what? Maybe I'll do like a 5K on the hour, every hour, right? Because I had read about in Tennessee, a Big Bear backyard. I think that's what they're called, or a backyard run, and it just happened. It's happening right. It might be happening right now. Like the guy has been doing it for 100 hours. There are 2 people. And so you run a loop, and it's a 5K, and every hour on the hour it starts. And the winner is the person who is the last man standing, right? So like if you and I were doing it and we failed on like together on the last one, nobody wins. And I'm like,
okay.
And like right out of Mr. Stallings' handbook, I'm like, fuck yeah, that's it right there, right? And so I was like, I'm going to do one of those. And then I couldn't because COVID. And like I had it written on a mirror, you know, big backyard, whatever it was. And it was October, and it was canceled because of COVID. And so I was like, well, why can't I just do my own? So I got on my elliptical, and I'm like, I'm going to make this for a training event to train up. And I'm like, well, why can't I do this, attach it to St. Jude's? And then so that's what I did. So the first year, I think I did like 36 hours or 24 hours, I forget, you know. And then I stopped. I didn't even just stop to stop. Like I was like, okay, yeah, I'm done. You know. That
year, I remember on Instagram, I was like, man, he's still going. Like,
yeah. And then the next year I did like 36 hours, and the next year I did like 48. And then this past year I did 36, like a stomach bug or something. I was like, oh man, I'm done. But I just started doing it, and I do it like every February, which is Kid World Cancer Month or Day, somewhere in February. So I just do it that day. And so I just I didn't pick that as an event to do. I just did it. And then my brother called me one day, and he was like, hey, do you want to bike across Iowa? And I'm like, sure, like ride a bicycle? And he's like, yeah, there's this festival, you know, and you can ride in a tutu, you can ride however you want. And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'm in.
That's Ragbri.
Ragbri in Iowa. And so, and I get out there, and I go and I push myself to be there. Like you can stop at every little town and have beer. And like I knew one guy who would go, and he'd stop at this town and get hammered drunk and like get kicked out of town because he's being belligerent, ride to the next one, which is like 10 or 15, 20 miles away. And by the time he gets there, he's sober again. And this past year was their 50th anniversary. And I think like there was like 70,000 riders or 60,000. It was massive, but there's usually like 30,000. But I would get up in the morning, and I don't like riding in the heat. So I'd get up in the morning, and I'd take off, and I'd be done with all of my rides by 10:30 or 11:30 in the morning. And then I'd do whatever I want. And so, but I enjoyed pushing myself. So, that became now an event that I'm doing every year. As long as my brother and sister-in-law want to do it, I'll do it with them. But they call me up, and they're like, hey, you want to do this stupid something? Or I'm like, yeah. So I don't really pick any of my events. They do.
Oh, cool.
Right? Like I want to swim the English Channel, right? Logistically, it's a lot to do. And less than 1,200 people have done it. And so I really want to do it. But I haven't said, hey, I'm going to swim the English Channel. Like I haven't committed to it yet. So, but I know if I say it, then I have to do it.
Have you read that book by Ross Edgley, where he's this guy that does these crazy kind of challenges too? But one of the ones that he attempted, and what he talks about in his book, is swimming around the entire UK.
No.
Yeah, that seems like it's a little off topic, but yeah, if you ever, his name's Ross Edgley, and the book's, pretty fascinating, is, and that might shed some light on some of the logistical challenges if you're looking to research and doing that. But that's cool. So after you do that, we'll have to have another podcast to revisit that.
Yeah, if I do it.
I think it'll be a matter of when with you, probably.
Maybe.
How do you prepare physically and psychologically before you undertake these challenges? I know for each challenge it's probably a little different physically, but I really want to focus more on the psychological aspect. That's really what fascinates me, and I'm interested to learn, what your thought process is.
Okay, so I'll start with the physical aspect. I don't do anything. I do not. So I try to stay physically fit, and then I try to go to the gym every day. And that's it. Whether I do cardio or whether I lift, but that's all I do.
And that's just general fitness for you.
General fitness for me. I go by the philosophy of, and if I'm going to do like the endless elliptical challenge, right? I will stop going to the gym a month or two prior on purpose, right? Because no kid gets to train for cancer. So if I'm going to do something for a kid with cancer, it's going to suck. Like, it's just going to suck.
Well, so, you really embody what it's all about.
And I don't like, I make no illusions. I'm not trying to put myself in their shoes or whatever. But if no kid gets to train for cancer, so I don't get to train for this. And on every video I've ever made, I say, like, no donation's too small. No kid deserves cancer. But the third thing is, no kid gets to train for cancer. So physically, I don't do anything. Mentally, I don't do anything. It's what's in front of me. It's whether it was Mr. Stallings, whether it was doing missions as a Green Beret, one of those things, I don't care. Whatever you tell me what the mission is, right? If you tell me, hey, Scott, like, this is your mission, you have to go, and you can't go home until this mission's complete, and it's stab the Pope. I'm going to go stab the Pope. That's the mission. And it's not done until it's done. And so that's it.
Is that a quality you've always possessed, or is that something that was kind of drilled into you during SF selection in your time throughout the military?
No, SF selection was just fun.
Oh, okay.
But I honestly will tell you that it goes back to my 10th grade English teacher. Wow. Like, I know, like, I wanted to get that A so bad in his class. I wanted to. And I was just disciplined to do everything that I could to do it. And I was 1/10 of a point away from getting that A. Yeah. And he was proud that he didn't give an A away. You know what I mean? Like, he was happy to do it. But in 5 years, he hadn't given one away. And not today, Satan. So, you know what I mean? Yeah. But I just strived, like, I knew that was the goal. That was the mission. So, yeah.
Can you talk about some of your most recent challenge that you did, and if what you learned about yourself through that, if anything, and how you would change going into the next challenge? And
yes. So I have a friend there's a company out there that does, it's called Everesting, I think, where you can walk up a ski slope, and then they clock that elevation, and then you get on a ski lift and come back down, and you just keep making that loop until you reach the elevation of 29,290 feet, which I think that's the magic number that says you've hiked Everest.
Okay.
And people do that. And my friend wanted to do it. And he called me and he was like, hey, and I met him on the Appalachian Trail. And so he called me and he's like, hey, you want to do this thing together? And I'm like, sure. And then he called me back and he's like, it's like $6,000. I'm not doing this. And I'm like, I'm not doing it. It's $6,000. And so he's like, you know what? I'm just going to make my own company. And I said, okay. And he's like, would you hike the premier event, the initial one? I'm like, yeah, sure. No problem. And so, but his philosophy was you go up and then walk back down, right? So there's no rest and there's nothing level. And so and you could sign up to do Klingman's Dome, which is the highest peak on the Appalachian Trail.
Okay.
You could sign up to do Denali, which is the highest peak in North America. You could sign up to do Mount Everest. And then you could sign up to do Olympus Mons, which is the highest peak on Mars, which is 72,000 feet.
Jeez.
So it comes out to be like 153 miles. And you have like 3.5 days to do it. And I had no idea. I was just like, yeah, sure, man, I'll do it, right? And so I set up a GoFundMe site and I started going for it. And he said, And he kept trying to tell me what the metric was. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, dude. Okay, yeah, sure. He's like, you need to start training. I'm like, I'm not training. F that. I'm not, And so I ended up being on a podcast from a mutual friend, a guy named Dr. Mike Simpson. And it was then when Mike was like, okay, hey, tell me the metrics. And I'm like, whoa, hold on, what? What did I just do?
What did I get myself into?
Yeah. And so, but I'd already signed up for it, and we were like a week out, and I hadn't trained at all. Like, I stopped going to the gym. But I got there, and I had gone 80 miles in a day and a half, and I was done. But I was on track to finish with like 12 hours to spare. There was a hurricane that happened on the East Coast, Northeast, when this happened, and it dumped like 6 inches of water the day before, man. And I couldn't keep my feet dry, and so I just had these blisters that were everywhere, and I couldn't physically walk anymore without. I could have gone like maybe 10 more miles. I could have gone maybe 20 more miles, but I couldn't go the additional 70 miles, and I knew it. And it was just getting worse and worse. And like the staff, to their credit, was like drying my shoes out for me when I was getting some sleep, and I'm changing socks when I can, but you take 2 steps and your foot is soaked. And right. So I just couldn't keep them dry. And I was like, look, I want to finish this because I don't want to do this hike again. But I didn't. So now I got to do it again. So
is it going to be a yearly event now?
So the company that he has is and it's ironhike.com, that company. And he's a really good guy. But they'll hike in 1 year, every year at this place, at this ski resort. And then he's trying to do it once a year at this ski resort, once a year, but 3 months later at this ski resort. So he's trying to do it quarterly at different ski resorts.
Okay.
Yeah, but right now it's just once a year at Mohawk Mountain in Connecticut. And like the owners of Mohawk Mountain, super nice. They went out of their way to do whatever they could to help us out. Yeah. But like everyone who was there that did it, and it was the inaugural event, and I think they just had like 30 people sign up. But nobody did anything greater than Denali.
Okay.
So like, yeah, Klingman's Dome. So like a bunch of people came out and they did 12 laps. I had to do 122
wow.
to get it done, and I didn't. So, but next year.
So it was a lot of people just did the Denali one because that's what they. Did you have to like sign up exactly for that ahead of time, or is it just did they stop at a certain point because of the weather conditions?
No, that's what they signed up for. So they signed because like that equated to be like 12 miles. And so when you start looking at people who are doing adventure running and hiking, like doing a marathon is not really a financial windfall for the people who are running it, but doing a half marathon is, so. People's threshold is a half marathon.
Okay, got it.
So, and 12 miles on a going up and down is a good threshold. And I think that he's going to be super successful with this. It's going to just take time. So, but next year,
yeah. Hopefully, we can generate some people that want to do it from listening to the podcast too. I know there's a lot of people are skydivers and they're adventurous in nature. So, yeah. And speaking of being adventurous in nature, I can really appreciate your adventurous nature of these challenges and the effort that goes into completing them. This innate quality you have for adventure spans a host of different activities you've continued throughout your life. Not only are you Special Forces Green Beret and a skydiver, but you're also into scuba diving and rock, ice, and mountain climbing and road bike racing. Are there any activities that I haven't mentioned in that list, and what's your favorite?
I tried to learn how to kiteboard in Hawaii when I lived there for 2 years, and I tried to learn how to kiteboard, but I was not very successful. It was really cool. And I can surf, but if it was hey, if you don't surf this wave, the world is going to come to an end. We would survive. But if I don't win a gold medal, the world's going to come to an end. We're going to die. That type of thing. Right. But really just kind of getting out there and being outside and doing stuff. It doesn't really matter. And I don't know that I have any one single favorite activity. Like hiking, there's like this great scenery and you get to see this. And, along the Appalachian Trail, I vividly remember certain days where it was just beautiful. And then I've been scuba diving in the Galapagos Islands where I'm surrounded by tens of thousands of fish in a school of fish. And it's on my YouTube channel, like a little tiny. So and I just held a GoPro there and I was just in awe about that. Like I ran out of air and I was like,
might as well go back up now.
Yeah. But so there's no one favorite thing, like biking across Iowa when the sun is coming up. That's awesome. And it kind of makes me think of like Forrest Gump where, he's talking about all the cool things he did. Yeah. So.
That's cool. Were there any epiphanies or lessons you learned about yourself through those activities, which you've applied to other aspects of life?
No. I'm a dumbass. I shouldn't be doing this. I don't know. I don't think so. I'll tell you, and I know I'm long-winded on everything, and everything kind of comes back to a central or a theme. Mm-hmm. But on the Appalachian Trail, everybody has a trail name, right? And people would ask me, "What's my trail name?" And I'm like, "It's Scott." And they're like, "Well, that's no fun." And, why is that? And I said, "Well, look, if I'm supposed to be out here learning something about myself, and I'm supposed to have this epiphany with me, why would I want to be someone else? Why would I want this pseudo name to get this experience? It's supposed to be me. It's supposed to be about me. I'm supposed to have this experience." But as far as epiphanies on anything, I don't know. I mean, you just in the moment, you just like that. I go back to that school of fish. I'm in awe there, and just realize how small and insignificant I am in the grand scheme, and now translate that to some other event that you do, and it's the same thing. So,
all right,
yeah.
And do you know where that came from? The trail names?
No.
Yeah, I'll have to do some research. That's an interesting thing to me that I was always wondering about that as well.
It's probably like some illegal hikers and like the cops came on them and like, "Hey, what's your name? We're looking for, Fred Sanford." And like, "Oh, no,
Yeah, that's probably exactly.
I'm bear hiker, I don't know.
What's the most difficult challenge you've ever faced in your life and how did you overcome that?
Oh God, I don't know. By having fun. Like just having a good attitude, you put good stuff out in the universe and good stuff comes back. Just having a good outlook on something makes everything that sucks suck less. So, and what is the greatest challenge? I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's a great answer. That kind of goes back to how you approached SF selection, and I think it's a great outlook to have for sure. One of your hobbies is making and playing ukuleles. How did you get into that?
So I saw this band Walk Off the Earth, and you'll know who them when I say it. Like they had a YouTube video and they played 5 people playing one guitar at the same time, but they played each person played a different part of the song. And I thought, man, that was a really cool band. And so I started following them, and they just do like weird covers, but they play ukulele. And I had one. And so like I just started playing it more and more. And then I watched a guy called Jake Shimabukuro play While My Guitar Gently Weeps on YouTube. And if you've never seen it, go watch it. The guy's phenomenal. And then like he was playing in Charlotte. And I was like, I drove to Charlotte and I watched the guy play. And I watched him play like right after it broke. And so like I always say, like he's ukulele famous. Like if I say Jake Shimabukuro, people are like, hey, whatever. But if you're in Hawaii or where ukulele, you say Jake Shimabukuro, you're like, oh man, that guy, yeah, he's
okay.
So like I'd love to be ukulele famous one day in my life, I'm sure. If I had to pick fame, that's what I would do. But he hadn't broke yet. He hadn't become ukulele famous. He was still playing. Like when I saw him play, there were maybe 100 people in the room. And then, and I've seen the guy play 11 times now. And like if I go see him, he'll be like, oh, hey, how you been? I haven't seen you since, and when I moved to Hawaii, I saw him, he lives there. So I saw him like every time he played at a certain club. And I wasn't stalking or anything, but it's just really good music and it's really fun to watch. But like I had I talked with his mom and his sister, and we just and my daughter's with me, Julia or Abigail, which I always do, and I'm talking with his mom, and she's behind me. She's like, Dad. And I'm like, hang on a second. And, and I'm talking, and she's like, Dad. And I'm like, well, hang on, And then he walked away, and I was like, oh, yeah. She was like, yeah, my son's right there. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's your son, yeah. And she's like, Dad, he was standing right behind you. He wanted to say
trying
something.
To tell you.
Yeah. And I was like, but I was just trying to be polite,
right.
So after that, I just kind of picked it up, and I just started playing picked it up, and we talked about earlier, if you just started messing around with a stringed instrument, you can kind of figure them out. And so that's what I did, and I really fell in love with it. And then the Army moved me to Hawaii for 2 years. And so I was there, and one of my patients in ortho came in, and she was the sweetest woman. And it was probably, I was scheduled to come back to North Carolina. And I had orders and everything. And she was one of my last patients. And she said that, she mentioned that her husband made ukuleles. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I'd love to make one. And she's like, okay. And she brought him to the hospital. And they lived right around the corner from it. And so he offered to teach me how to make ukuleles. And he's like, just buy the materials and I'll teach you. I took good care of his wife. And his name was Papa Ron. And you walked into his house, and there was just ukuleles everywhere. And he's like, I built this one for this one, And I had always done woodworking, right? So I have my father and I have a 20 by 30 workshop, and we can make almost anything out of wood. And but I couldn't make an instrument, and so this guy offered to teach me how to make a ukulele, and so I learned how to make it. And when I was done, he was like, you're going to make a better ukulele than I do really fast, because I know how to make a ukulele, but I don't know how to use wood.
Okay.
Right. And you do. And then so I just started making ukuleles for people, and I don't make them often. My dad will be like, hey, let's make a ukulele. I'm like, yeah, great. Let's make one. And my dad is like the smartest person on the face of the earth. He dreams about woodwork, right? And then, so I read an article, and it was either Steve Vai or it was Joe Satriani. I don't remember which, and I might be wrong altogether, but they were interviewing that person's wife, and they said he plays guitar in his sleep. His hands are moving in his sleep, right? And that's what my dad does with wood, right? If he has a problem with wood, he goes to bed, and he wakes up and he has a pad by his bed, and he writes it down.
Wow.
And then he goes back to bed, right? I don't remember any of my dreams. Zero, right? I remember one dream in my life, and that was it. And as far as I'm concerned, like, I go to bed, God flips a switch, and then 5 minutes later he flips it back on, and I'm awake. Like, I don't remember anything. And it's not that I don't dream. I'm sure everybody does. But my dad dreams wood. And so when I came back from Hawaii, he was really mad, because I was making ukuleles, and he's like, well, I want to make one. And I'm like, okay, well, let's make one. And then he's like, well, let's do this. And I'm like, no, let's not do that. And making a ukulele is really about cutting something really nice and sanding something really nice, gluing it together, and doing like 30 minutes of work, and then walking away for a day. And my dad has no patience. So he's like, well, what do we do now? We go inside and watch something on television. No, but we got to do that. It's like,
right.
And so, and I told him, I'm like, I'm going to break you. I'm going to break you. And, but now he'll build one on his own, and he enjoys that aspect of, let's wait. I don't like any other wood project that he does. It's together in a day. It doesn't matter what it is, but this, he knows it's 2 weeks, like at a minimum. Like, if you're going fast, it's 2 weeks. But other than that, like the Kamaka, the ukulele, the people who invented the ukulele, I toured their facility. And ironically, like the third generation guy was born at Womack.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we had this huge long conversation about, and I told him I build ukuleles, and he's like, oh, well, yeah. And he talked even more, like, because I'm never going to be his competition.
Right.
His last name's Kamaka. So
this was in Hawaii, I take it?
Yeah, it was in Hawaii. And it takes them 14 days to make a ukulele, and they've got like a team of, okay, you do the fretboard, and then you do this, and you do the sanding, and you do the varnishing, and and it takes them 2 weeks to get a ukulele out. So, it's not going to get much quicker than that,
right?
And they're not automated, but they've
got the systems down.
They have the systems down.
Right.
They are modernized, but people still build it. But
still made by hand, but they have the systems. That's cool. I'll bet working with your dad is a cool bonding experience.
It is.
Was he a woodworker by trade?
No. He was like 42 or 47. He's 88 now, and
he looks young for 88.
Yeah. And he's spry too. He's got it upstairs, and he still moves. He's gonna die, like fall over. That's how he's going to die. Because he
can't stop moving.
Right. Yeah. He's just like, one day he's just going to be like, hey, like in The Princess Bride, where the guy drinks it, he's like, ah.
Yeah.
That's how he's going to go.
What piece of advice or wisdom did your father impart, which has resonated most throughout your life?
Financial planning. That was it. He got me doing financial planning as soon as I could. Like I had a job at a grocery store, and he took my paycheck every week, every 2 weeks or whatever he got. He took it until $1,000 was saved, and he put it into stocks. And he always told me, like, stocks, savings, precious metal, and all real estate, and all those things. And so all of those things I've done throughout my life, right? So the business that I own, I don't make any money off it. I put it right back into the business. Between my Army retirement and investing, I'm okay.
Nice. Yeah, that's a really cool way to do it, and that's something that I might implement with my daughter Lauren, because I've talked to her about investing. I've only been maybe doing it for about 10 years, but I've talked to her about it. But I think where I need to improve as a father is actively find a way to kind of not force her hand, but say, hey, I'm going to take a little bit of this and invest it for you, so that you can get a head start with it.
So with Abby, I employ her. So on all of my medical charts, I have to have a face model that I draw on, and it's hers. And because I do that, she's employed, right? Which means she can have a Roth IRA.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
So every month from the age of 10 until 18, she maxes out her IRA.
Wow.
Through her salary, through me, right? And then when she's 18, she's on her own. She can either add to it or not. But if she just does those 8 years and doesn't do anything else, by the time she's my age, it'll be like $3.5 million. Yeah. And if you add it all up, the initial investment's like $28,000. So,
jeez, yeah, can't do much better than that.
Get on that.
Yeah, definitely. After you retired from the military, you're talking about your business. You started that business. Can you tell us more about that, and what have been the most challenging and rewarding aspects of that endeavor?
So I started a medical clinic, and I do Botox, facials, fillers, which is like such a departure for like a Green Beret, skydiver.
It's been a reinvention for you.
Yeah. But I really love what I do. It's amazing. It is great medicine. I think the most challenging part of being a business owner is being a business owner, where as a PA in the Army, right? And I would imagine as a PA in a civilian hospital setting, where like I would go, hey, I need a sponge. And then there's a sponge in my hand. Now I'm like, I need a sponge. Oh, well, I got to go get it.
Right.
And I have to do the financing. I have to do the sales reps. I have to do all of the website, the social media. The easiest part of my job is the medicine.
Are you doing everything yourself, or do you have anyone helping you at all with it?
No, I just started making enough to do, to hire a website. And then I'm going to try to turn over the social media here in a bit.
Nice. You've obviously been highly successful throughout your life. What are some key attributes you've employed throughout your many endeavors which you rely on to achieve success? In other words, what is your success equation, or what does success in life mean to you?
I don't know that I have an equation. I'm literally making up everything as I go along. And as is evidenced by the tale, I've fallen backwards into most everything. But I think it just goes back to having a really good attitude and finding the good in everything, right? Where I was watching, listening to Joe Rogan, and he was talking about Jocko, and like any problem that came up, his answer was always like, good. Well, this fell apart. Good. Find the good in everything. It's the good helps you find a different avenue, or just really just see the good in everything, and just keep moving forward. I mean, the option to sit on a couch and cry is not an option. So I don't know if that answered it, man.
It does, yeah. I love it. I love your approach to things and life in general, and I really appreciate you being here. Is there anything else you want to say, or where can people find you, online, or your business? The name of your business, Age Undefined Aesthetics, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And if you can just tell people where to find you.
ageundefined.com, and we're in Southern Pines. And on social media, I think it's I don't think I know it is. It's Age Undefined on social media. But all the social media stuff is junk because I do it, and I don't really know what I'm doing. Like, it's so bad. But you have to be bad before you can be good.
For sure.
And if you think like I'm just going to take on this new endeavor and then I'm going to be a pro at it right off the bat, then you're going to be disappointed. So I know, like, I got to get through all of my weird social media. Like, I think this is a great idea, and you do it, and you're like, oh my God, that sucked. And so until I can afford to have someone do it for me who knows what they're doing.
What I think is cool about it, though, is that it's authentic. It's authentic to who you are, and it's part of your brand.
Yeah, that's very true. So and I want to try to keep that goofy aspect of it. Like, I don't want to take myself too seriously. Where, like, someone will say, oh, you're a medical spa, but I'm not. I'm a medical clinic and I do aesthetics. Where I would love to have this medical spa where it's really posh and you can get a massage here, you can get a facial here, you can get a sauna or steam or here, and then I'm there and I'm doing, toxin, or I'm doing filler, or, whatever. But I still don't want to take myself too seriously. Like, oh, excuse me, I don't want to like greet you with my pinkies out as I'm holding a glass. I still want to be Scott, and I still I hug my patients when they leave because I have this great connection with them, and I like being goofy like that. So, yeah.
Well, awesome! Thank you so much for coming out here and doing this. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to. Seeing you up in the air, maybe making some jumps soon.
Yeah, I got to get back into skydiving because it's been a little bit too long. But running a business, it takes everything.
Right. Yeah, you get your priorities. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I do. Thanks.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of A Champion's Journey podcast. I look forward to putting out episodes more regularly in the very near future, as well as introducing additional content for paid subscribers that you won't want to miss out on. Look for exciting details on how to become a subscriber in the next episode.